Important negotiations are going on between Ukrainian, European and American representatives in Berlin, and there are several key issues in these negotiations. The first is actual withdrawal of troops to make a kind of a demilitarized zone around the big cities of the eastern part of Ukraine, which is called Donbass, meaning Kramatorsk, Slavyansk, Konstantinivka and others. The second is the guarantees, the security guarantees that Ukraine is demanding in order not to allow Russia to attack again. And the third issue, which Americans seem to be really pressing Ukraine, is about accepting the de facto occupation of the big Ukrainian territories, including Crimea, including southern Ukraine and eastern Ukraine. And all these questions are actually very problematic. We need to understand that I think there is a deadlock on all of them. Like, take the withdrawal of troops. Zelensky is saying, okay, if we withdraw our troops, Russians also need to withdraw their troops. But the practical questions remain. If all the sides will withdraw their troops, for example, in today's drone war, what will it mean? Because the drones can go 40-50 kilometers in size. So for example, we have a territory where there are no de facto troops, but for example, Russian drones are flying in the sky. All Russians are saying, we'll withdraw our army, but we will introduce the National Guard, which is the same thing as to introduce the army, right? And who will control these territories? Who will ensure the needs, the life needs of these territories? Who will govern them if you don't have security? So it seems to be very kind of theoretical, and I'm not sure it will. Both or all the sides have really the answers to this question. The second one is the security guarantees, and there's some information saying that the negotiations about security guarantees are going on, and that between Ukraine and United States, and as if the negotiations are like that United States could provide security guarantees for Ukraine identical to the Article 5 of NATO. But if this is the case, then the question arises why we need to invent some other security guarantees instead of just accepting Ukraine in NATO. Of course, there are risks of nuclear war between NATO and Russia, but the same risks exist if United States give security guarantees to Ukraine. For example, if there is an obligation that United States will help Ukraine militarily if Russia attacks again. And the third issue about that Russia wants, of course, Ukraine and everybody else to accept that the territories it occupied are actually Russian territories. And here's the big question for the international law and for the Ukrainian law, because in the Ukrainian law there is an article in the constitution that says that any questions of Ukrainian territories, territorial organization, need to be solved on the Ukrainian referendum. So the question is, where does this referendum can take place? Under which conditions will the citizens of the occupied territories take part in it? And referendum is not possible during the war, so it should be done after the war. And then there is a question of the changes into the constitution. So the big questions here, but also the question about the international law. If we accept the situation when that Russia, annexed territories through the military aggression, and then we include this into international law and we redraw the borders militarily, what will it mean for the international order? What will it mean for other countries willing to do the same? So we may be approaching to some breakthrough, but everything depends, of course, on the will of Russians to really negotiate. And the impression that we have in Ukraine is that Russians are only buying time in these talks, that they are increasing their military budget, they are bombarding Ukrainian cities, they're bombarding heavily the Ukrainian south, Odesa and Mykolaiv, and that might mean that they want to make life in these cities unbearable and create the internal turmoil in Ukraine, so that people will pressure the Ukrainian government to end the war on all costs, any costs. Maybe this is what they mean. And in their plans, of course, there is a plan of creating Novorossia, so-called Novorossia, which goes from Odesa to Kharkiv. There is a plan to restore the Soviet Union, meaning to occupy also the Baltic states. And there is a plan that they expressed in 2021 to divide Europe again. So the plans are different, and the plans are as if they have a plan to go forward until the moment they are stopped. It's a goal of Ukraine and its partners to stop Russia finally, because if we negotiate something, there is no guarantee that Russia will not continue.